Endless Hustle presented by Cardone. If you're like me and you're noticing dark circles under your eyes, wrinkles creeping up, or breakouts, then Cardone is the best solution for you. Cardone is an effective skincare system for men. Cardone uses cactus extract in all their products to soothe the irritation from shaving. This quick, easy to use skincare system gives you real results in just a few steps. Use code BroBible for 15% off. All right, let's have some fun here on the Endless Hustles. We have one of the most successful athletes turned broadcasters, turned YouTube stars, turned authors. Emmanuel Acho, you're pretty much doing it all these days. Congrats on all of the success. Of course, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man has become an institution to itself. You've become this huge personality. Is this all crazy? I mean, can you believe it all?
Arthur, life has been a whirlwind, my friend. Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. The first episode dropped about 380 days ago now, June 1st, 2020. And my life flipped, turned upside down, to steal a quote from the great Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Now, honestly, I can't believe it, how my life has changed, the people I've now partnered with, from McConaughey to Oprah, etc. It's all been good, man.
Let's talk about McConaughey, first of all. So I had him on for 45 minutes a couple weeks ago. And even through Zoom, he might have more swag than anybody on the planet. If there's an award, forget Oscars, if there's an award for cool, that dude wins it. He's pure.
Did he come on in a blue button down, probably with the sleeves rolled up about 3/4 length, and he probably was wearing glasses and his hair was slicked back?
That's exactly it. And he was in his Airstream, which, again, if you were to check boxes on how do I become the coolest MFer on the planet, McConaughey is literally checking each one of those boxes.
And he probably ended by saying, just keep living.
I see you're working very actively with him. But so first of all, let's start with Oprah, because I remember the first time I saw Uncomfortable Conversations. And at first I'm like, this dude's going to make $1 gajillion because that's the best title ever created. And then I find out Oprah's in there and I'm like, all right, now it's going to be billions of dollars. But how does that whole Oprah connection begin?
It's a great question. So episode 1 of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, it was in the midst of so much racial tension, racial turmoil. We all know, we've all been living in it. And so I sit in an all-white room, Arthur, and I just sit down in front of a camera and I record an episode for 9 minutes and 27 seconds. I answer 4 questions. For those that are just now listening or just now watching who don't know who Emmanuel Acho is, who I am, I'm retelling the story. I answer 4 questions. Why are Black people rioting? This was in the midst of all the riots. Why can Black people say the N-word, but white people can't? Okay, Emmanuel, but what about white privilege? That doesn't exist. And lastly, okay, well, what about Black on Black crime in Chicago? Why are we talking about police brutality, but Black people aren't talking about that? Arthur, as you know, you've seen the episode, I answered those 4 questions. 5 days later, 25 million YouTube and Instagram and Twitter views later, I get a call from a no-caller ID number. I'm sitting at my glass table in Austin, Texas, Saturday, about to crush some Cheerios. True story. And I get a call, no-call ID number, so I pick it up. Hello? Acho. McConaughey speaking. I want to have a conversation. I'm like, McConaughey? Like Matthew McConaughey? So McConaughey calls me first, Arthur, and he's like, hey man, I want to have a conversation with you. I'm like, hey, I'll record episode 2 in about 4 days. I'd love to do it then. He says, let's do it tomorrow. I say, McConaughey wants to do it tomorrow. We do it tomorrow. So I record episode 2 with McConaughey the next day. After that episode drops, I get a call from another no-caller ID number. Hi, Emmanuel, this is Oprah Winfrey's team. Are you free later today to hop on FaceTime? The hell? Am I free later today? Is she free? I'm free. Whenever Oprah's free, I'm free. Everybody, stop the presses. Oprah's free, so I'm going to be free. So I hop on FaceTime with Oprah and her right-hand woman, and we talk for about 30, 45 minutes, and I just tell her who I am, tell her my passions. Oprah said she saw the episode, and I told her, I said, well, Oprah, I'm currently working on writing a book. And she responded to this, Arthur. She said, books? I love books. And so we partnered to write Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. The book debuted at number 3 on the New York Times bestsellers list, behind Matthew McConaughey's book, which was number 1 in Greenlight. So it's just a beautiful symbiosis partnership with Oprah, how McConaughey was weaved into my story. And that's really the fundamental foundational stages of uncomfortable conversations with the Black man.
I talk to everybody on this show, and I was thinking today, if I were to assign kind of this elite tier right now of athletes on broadcaster who have then created this mega brand for themselves, it's Jalen Rose. There's a few. Jay Williams is in that class. You are in that class, and you at this point may be at the top of that class. So did you have this vision for yourself as you're finishing up your NFL career? Are you like, let me manifest myself into a broadcaster? How did that all begin?
Well, here's what we know in life, right? They say that it's easier to get a job when you have a job, correct? And so when I'm in the NFL, remember, you talked about Jalen Rose. I believe he was a first-round pick. I don't remember, but we all know Jalen Rose from the freaking Fab Five. Jay Williams, the number 2 overall pick in the NBA. He was a beast out of Duke. We all know his story, motorcycle accident, only thing that derailed his career. Then you have Emmanuel Acho, a 6th-round pick 204 in the National Football League, played all of 33 games, I think. I think I played like 24 games and made 33 tackles, just like a very pedestrian NFL career. So while I'm in the NFL, Arthur, I'm like, okay, the NFL is going to use me. How can I use it back? Let me start working on some skills, mastering my craft in different avenues and areas. I went to the University of Texas at Austin for undergrad. And so my last year in the NFL, I went back to Texas and said, hey, I would love to be a part of Longhorn Network, a subsidiary of ESPN. They offered me a job. I was like, am I ready to be done playing football? And I thought this true story, and I wish more athletes would think exactly what I am about to tell them. I went to the rookie symposium my rookie year, and they said, the doctor, salary-wise, starts here at like 21. And by the time they're 35, they're here. The athlete, they start here at 21. And by the time they're 35, they're there. Eventually, at some point in time, they cross each other's paths. And I constantly thought about that, Arthur, and said, I want to be the athlete that does this. I don't ever want to decline. I want to go here, and then I want to instantly pivot back uphill. And that was my mentality as far as trying to become a TV icon, if you will.
This is fascinating. Anytime I talk to somebody for the first time, I'm always curious, is the person going to match media personality or the actor or whatever we know them for? You're actually more electric in person than you even are on TV. And it's mind-blowing. You're coming like through the screen. Was this always how you were? Were you always this extrovert and outgoing?
No, I try to be a master imitator. The real geniuses in life, I believe, are those who know how to borrow and put it into their own words. I remember the story of Michael Jordan. And a story is told of Michael Jordan and how he was always dressed up after games. And his teammates would be like, hey, bro, why are you always in these super nice suits or fancy cars and these nice shoes? Why you always look so put together? And he said, this may be the only time they see me, and I have to impress. And so whenever I do something, I'm like, this might be the only time I talk to Arthur, and I got to impress, because people have an expectation when they meet Michael Jordan. He's supposed to be Michael Jordan. In the same manner, people have an expectation now when they talk to me. I'm supposed to live up to that expectation. I'm supposed to say something incredibly intellectual, hopefully partially intelligent. I'm supposed to speak in quotes and give you a morsel to hold on to. And so now, man, whenever the lights come on, that's what you got to do.
I love it. I love the way you just approached it. What a great metaphor, by the way, because I'm a Michael Jordan fanatic, so I absolutely love that stuff. So Rachel Lindsay ends up recommending you for The Bachelor. You do the After the Final Rose. Now you're being introduced to a whole new audience. And by the way, one of the most viral and engaged audiences on all of television. How does that change things for you once you end up becoming part of Bachelor?
Man, well, first off, Bachelor Nation is crazy and amazing. You have to love it. I mean, their obsession with the show is phenomenal. It added another aspect of variety to who I was, right? I was athlete. That was in my bucket. Then I was racial reconciliator, racial reconciler. That was in my bucket. And then all of a sudden I end up in like a couple commercials here. So now I'm kind of like, more mainstream, right? Doing a Lexus commercial, a LinkedIn commercial, that's in my bucket. Then I got The Bachelor. And now you're hosting one of the most watched shows in modern day history and the most volatile episode of the most watched show in modern day history. And so now you pour that into my bucket. The hard part is juggling all of those fan bases. That's the trick, is staying true to myself while also properly and adequately honoring all those fan bases. Man, The Bachelor wants to talk about love. They don't want to talk about race, but there was a dilemma. They had to talk about race because race was standing in the way of love. So enter Emmanuel Acho. How could I navigate this racial tension and try to bring it back to what the fans care about and love? Thankfully, the couple in Matt James and Rachel Kirkconnell, who were not together at the time, have since reconciled. I will definitely take my part in the reconciliation.
So we have to check off the matchmaker box now for you, as if we didn't have enough accolades.
Bingo.
Matchmaker. What was that experience like? Because I think to myself, and you nailed it all just answering that question, which is you're under an immense amount of pressure. I mean, this has now become essentially an international story, and you're the man in the middle at this moment. Is there a pressure you're feeling? Is it like, if I get this wrong, I could set back race relations 50 years ago? What's going through your head?
It was incredibly difficult. That's the hardest thing I've ever had to do on television, bar none. Nothing has ever been that difficult. What's going through my head is this. You have to find a way to give people what they need, even if it's not what they want. I don't have children, but I remember being a child, maybe because I'm still childish. But for those listening, watching that do have children, you understand that you gotta feed your kids the green beans and the broccoli and the spinach. They need that, but they want the dessert and they want the pop and they want the soda and they want the cupcakes. But what they need is the green beans and the broccoli. So how can you mask the meal to make sure they get the needs along with the wants? I was the chef, if you will, and I understood that at this point in time, our country needs the racial reconciliation. Our country needs the understanding that history is meant to be remembered, but not all history is meant to be celebrated. Our country needs to understand there's a difference between being racist, racially ignorant, and racially insensitive. Let's identify the difference. That's what our country needs. That's what that audience needs. But what that audience wants is to see two people fall in love and move on happily ever after. So the trick, Arthur, the difficulty, if you will, was how can I serve the broccoli, which doesn't necessarily taste nearly as good as the cupcake? How can I serve the racial reconciliation with the, oh my gosh, aren't y'all just so in love? That was the trick.
I'm now wondering when you're going to run for president. You're such a great orator. I'm like, when is the Emmanuel Acho? First, I see he's lieutenant governor under McConaughey. And then when's, are we 2028 ticketing? Is it McConaughey Acho?
Never. First McConaughey and I got to run for something in Texas.
All right. So I want to talk to you about nutrition and fitness, because I'm looking at you right now and you look like you're still in insane shape. So what do you do to, well, first of all, what does your diet look like? And then secondly, what do the workouts look like post-career?
Great question. I'm a huge 80-20 guy. 80% of the time I eat clean, 20% of the time I eat whatever. I'm a huge 80-20 guy. Now, my secret, I've never drank alcohol a day in my life to this day. So that's probably saved me a couple, I don't know, 100,000 calories over the course of life. But that's one trick and one tidbit. 80-20 guy is another tidbit. And then I think, lastly, during COVID, I just invested, man. First, I started outside, jump roping and resistance bands. I'm like, oh, COVID only lasts 2 or 3 months. It's all not a big deal at all. 2 or 3 freaking years, it feels like. Then all of a sudden I bought, weight, 60-pound weight, 30-pound weight, 15-pound weight, got a bench. Okay, that was cool. COVID was still going on. Let's get an 80-pound weight. Let's get a 100-pound weight. Let's get a stationary bike. And that's kind of where I am now, Arthur. I've kind of built a section of my house, my living room, and I've just kind of turned it into a pseudo gym at times. Every morning, I do my production call for my sports show, Fox Sports 1, Speak for Yourself, from like 7 to 9. Then I work out daily from 9 to 10. Every day, without fail, 9 to 10. I take Wednesdays off. but then I usually do a 10-mile bike ride on Saturday or Sunday.
How does that differ from when you were a player? I can't even. I've seen NFL workouts, and that shit is beyond belief. How does it differ from when you were playing?
When you're playing, you're working out to improve. As an adult right now, I work out to maintain. And that would be the primary difference, right? I came into COVID at like 237 pounds. I'm probably right now like 234 or 235. Like when you're in the league, you're working out to build muscle, to grow muscle. Right now, I'm just working out like, hey, let's get through COVID, staying the same. And then when gyms open back up, if you want to hit it hard, hit it hard. But the kicker for me, Arthur, is like, live within your means. I don't have to go tackle people anymore. Like, my body doesn't need to be a shell of armor to take on a 315-pound man blindsiding me. Like now, my body just needs to be able to walk across the street without pulling a muscle. And so that's just kind of how I look at it.
My man, it only gets worse. I'm 43 years old and I work out every day, and now things are hurting that I didn't even know exist. Body parts that I didn't even know were part of me are now hurting.
Exactly right.
I want to rewind the clock for a minute. Young kid, Dallas, Texas, obviously Texas football. Where does football begin for you? And at what point do you realize that you can be a Division I player? And then at what point do you realize, oh, wow, I may actually have a chance to make it to the NFL?
I started playing football at 8 years old, padded football at 8 years old. I was young for my grade. So 8 years old put me in the fourth grade. Birthday's in November. My parents were born and raised in Nigeria. So football to them is that black and white soccer, that black and white round object that you kick with your feet. So I'm playing football. And in high school, I knew I was pretty good. By my junior year, my coach, Russell Labhart, he looks like he sounds. About 5'10", stocky, white dude, slick back hair, kind of from the country. He comes up to me. He was my position coach, put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "You're better than everybody else. Just go play like it." Flip switched. From that point forward, third game of the season against a school called Cassidy in Oklahoma, I just became a beast. I don't know what happened. I literally just became a beast. My brother, a year older than me, he played 9 years in the National Football League. He committed to Texas. My sophomore year would have been in high school. So by my junior year, I had committed to Texas. My senior year, I'm fully in, go to Texas. By my sophomore year in college, we went to the national championship game. I didn't know I could go to the NFL. Going to the NFL, it wasn't a thing in the Acho household, right? We're Nigerian Americans. You must be a doctor. You must be a lawyer. You must be an engineer, like doctor, lawyer, engineer. Those are the things you're supposed to be, my parents would say. And so by my sophomore year in college, my teammates would come up and be like, "Hey, bro, when you go to the NFL, it's going to be crazy." I'm like, "Who? Well, who goes to the NFL?" Like, "Hey, bro, in about 2 or 3 years, you thinking about leaving early? You going to leave after your junior year?" Leave where early? Everybody was telling me I was going to go. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm that good. By my junior year in college, it was just time to ball. And that's really when I figured it out.
So when you start realizing you're going to the NFL, obviously you're a 6th round pick and you're joking about it, but just to make it to the NFL, a select few. But 6th round pick is, hey, I may not have a job in 2 months. I've still got to make a team. So are you walking into that situation? Are you disappointed you're a 6th rounder? Are you looking at the opportunity and you're like motivated, like Brady mentality, like I'm going to kill everybody? What was your mindset going in?
Twofold, man. I think at least people, if you're hungry like I was, you have that I'm going to kill everybody mentality. But then you realize everybody can't be killed. It's a lot of good players out here. I tore my quad at the NFL Combine, which is what led to me falling in the draft. I'm sprinting in the 40-yard dash. Then all of a sudden I hear like boom, 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 boom. I thought it was my heels clicking together. It was really my quad muscle being ripped off the bone. So that led me to fall. I get to the league, the Cleveland Browns, and I was just like, all right, Acho, you a beast. So just show yourself to be one. I tore my MCL week 2 of the preseason against the Packers. I missed that whole rookie year with the torn MCL. Get traded to the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's really where I spent the bulk of my career. I was one of those guys where, like, I was fighting to stay on and off the roster. I could have probably played 7 or 8 years, but it wouldn't have been a smooth 7 or 8 years, right? I played 4 years, but it would have been like a here today, gone tomorrow type. And that was just too stressful of a life for me. So I came in super hungry, and I am a hungry individual, but I chase my talents, which is what's led me to where I am today.
I'm always curious. I've had Deshaun Jackson on the show. I just had LaShawn McCoy on a week or two ago. And I always love talking Philly sports and as an athlete, what that experience was like. And you always get different answers. Ultimately, if the city loves you, you're a god. But if the city doesn't love you, it can be a huge pain in the ass. What was it actually like for you? What was your feeling on Philadelphia sports as you were there?
I loved Philly, and I think Philly loved me just because I tried to be a good guy, right? 2015, that offseason, I started the majority of 2014, rotated as a starter. We went 10-6, barely missed the playoffs, and I end up going with a young fan to her high school prom. Now, mind you, this was before everybody was going to proms, right? Before Teddy Bridgewater did it, and I think Kirk Cousins did it. This is, 2015. And so, or it could have even been 14. Either way, it just ended up being like a cool thing that Philly respected. I was always in the community, doing stuff at different shelters. I threw a party for Salvation Army, a Chipotle party for a homeless shelter. I knew my time there was limited, and I knew I was only going to contribute so much on the field. So let me just try to embrace the community. And I think Philly really embraced me back.
Dude, you've got the toughest profile for being a professional athlete. You don't drink. You love Jesus. You're a well-behaved guy. Everything that as a professional athlete, I wouldn't have done. I'd be missing. I would have gone nuts. What was the temptation like? How hard is it? Obviously, we know Tim Tebow, and he's the other end of the spectrum. But how difficult was it when you're in that environment to maintain all the morals and values that have kept you who you are?
I don't think that money changes anyone. I think that money just exposes who you truly are. So, money and opportunity, like the NFL, I don't think it really changes you. It just really shows who you are. Like when I'm in the league, I just was able to do more in the community than I could otherwise, right? Now that I'm in Los Angeles with more money and with more, I hate to use the word fame, but that's the only word that can come to my mind. It just gives me a greater platform to do more. Now, it is tough because now the only thing stopping you is yourself. When you're in college, money stopping you, 6 a.m. workout stopping you, study hall stopping you. But when you're in the NFL, nothing's stopping you. You don't lack money. You don't lack opportunity. You don't lack resources. So it's a constant challenge to stay true to whoever it is that you actually are at your core.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. If I was a professional athlete, I would absolutely Corey Feldman my way out of the league. Like it would be a disaster. I also want to ask you about Carl Nassib, because obviously first openly gay athlete, which top selling jersey on Fanatics 2 straight days. What a world we live in now where an athlete can come out and be celebrated for it. So as a former athlete yourself, to be able to see that reception and ultimately how positive it was, how awesome was that?
I think it was great. I think that one, kudos to Carl Nassib for like living his truth, and kudos to Carl Nassib for having the courage, as odd as it may sound, but it definitely does take courage. I've been in those locker rooms. Those locker rooms are insensitive to a lot of things, a lot of phrases and words are uttered that were probably insensitive to different groups of people, different backgrounds, types, etc. So kudos to Carl Nassib for his courage and kudos to him for living his truth. I'm not surprised by the reception. I think we're just in a much more accepting era, at least publicly. I also would be remiss if we didn't mention Michael Sam. Remember, Michael Sam, 2013 SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He came out as gay, was drafted late, not until the 7th round, never makes the roster. And obviously, I assume at least that his sexuality played a part in his shortened NFL career. So let me not be remiss and let me mention Michael Sam as well. But I think Carl Nassib, kudos to him. Now it's really on that Raiders locker room because it's only going to get more difficult, right? Like there's no media right now. Nobody's answering the hard questions. Nobody's asking the hard questions. You're not playing games. You're not hearing remarks from the opponent. So now it's just a matter of his brotherhood surrounding him, if you will, and everybody just being on one accord.
And by the way, I do feel still, even though it's only been a few years, to see Michael Salmon not making a team and that potentially have played a part, to Nassib's jersey going number one, that we've come far, although there's a lot further to go, obviously, with that.
Correct. Because remember, jersey sales are dictated by fans. Jersey sales are dictated by you and I. Making a team is dictated by ownership. So when you're assessing how far we've come, you're looking at two different metrics to weigh that, right? Like with NASA, very wise because he had just signed a $25 million deal not too long ago. So very calculated of, okay, ownership, you all can't try to make some sort of decision based upon this announcement that I just made. So I'm very cautious to continue to make sure that Nassib is protected, if you will, both inside his locker room and outside of it as well.
I want to talk to you about takes, because one of your jobs as a broadcaster, and obviously we're seeing this new age, whether it's you guys, Stephen A. Smith and Kellerman, there's a battle of takes in sports television today. And I always think about when you're going to take a side, you know you're going to get either fan hate or fan love. When you're putting together your opinion, and I know you've got to stay authentic to who you are, but is that in the back of your mind that, like, I know you said that the Durant Pippen take, and I'm a huge 96 Bulls. I'll defend Pippen and Jordan to the ends of the earth. But Durant's a better player, and we can argue that over another conversation, although Pippen is insane. But I want to talk to you about just takes. So how much plays into it?
Well, I try to, like you said, first off, I think there's a lot of people in the industry that aren't fully authentic. And I think you're allowed to be lesser authentic if you didn't play the game. If I didn't play the game, it's easier for me to go out there and say that a future Hall of Famer got lucky when he wasn't. Like, it's easier for me to just talk mindlessly, but knowing how much it takes to play the game, it's so hard for me to just talk bad about somebody. Like you've seen people do when this Kwame Brown thing has now erupted from so many people that have talked bad about him over the years. I usually just try to speak from my heart. Like even Kevin Durant and Scottie Pippen, I said Kevin Durant is clearly the better player. I just think a lot more people would rather have Scottie Pippen's career. 6 rings to 2 rings, played on the most historical team of all time. So I really just stay true to me. And staying true to me is not to be ignorant of other things. Example, I'm a huge LeBron James fan. I choose LeBron James over Kevin Durant every second of the day. But I said, if Kevin Durant leads the Nets past the Bucks, and if he wins that game 5 after Harden had been hurt and Kyrie got hurt, I said he would have been the greatest player, and he did it. So I said Kevin Durant is currently the greatest player. He's the greatest basketball player present day. Now, LeBron James may become the greatest basketball player again July 16th when Space Jam 2 comes out and he takes down the Goon Squad. But until then, Kevin Durant's the greatest player. So I just try to stick to truth with my takes.
Before I let you go, I want to have a nice concentration because you have a children's book out, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Boy. I love this direction you've taken. Where did this start for you? Talk to me about being able to write this book and also the impact that you hope it has for young people everywhere.
Very simply, oftentimes our parents don't know the words to say, particularly about race. We know there's a lot of racial tension in our world, and we want to tell little David and little Johnny, well, make sure you treat all the black kids equally and make sure you're nice to the little girls at school, but you don't really know how to educate them on the nuances of race. So I wrote Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Boy because an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And in our society, we try to cure adults. Why don't we just take preventative measures to educate our children? Because if we can dismantle racial insensitivity before it gives birth to full-blown racism, we'll collectively be better as a society. So I wrote Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Boy, which thankfully debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, simply because I wanted to equip our parents, my white brothers and sisters, with the tools to make sure that their labor is not in vain and they are supplying their children with the tools they need to contribute to a greater society.
And I'm so happy that it debuted at #1 because A, you're doing all the right things in the messages you're sending, and more importantly, being able to communicate to a younger generation and generation who's going to look up to you for all the great things you're doing is just fabulous. So congratulations, Emmanuel.
My brother, thank you so much.
This has been a pleasure. Thank you. And everyone, make sure to check out his new book, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Boy. This has been awesome, dude. You're welcome back anytime.
All right, brother.
Thanks, brother. Talk to you.
Bye-bye.